Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name's Taylor Umphenour. I am so glad to be able to introduce a friend of mine, cinematographer, director of photography for Sinners, Autumn Durald Arkapaw. You have a very long history of a lot of passionate projects shooting on film. You're the first woman ever to shoot a large format feature film end-to-end with Ultra Panavision and IMAX 70mm.
Thank you.
A major accomplishment with a lot of complications to the actual shooting and the pipeline and all of it. But shooting on film is not new for you at all. You've been shooting on film for years. Can you talk a little bit about your passion for film and for shooting on film and why you prefer film as your format?
Yeah, I mean, I went to film school at AFI. I think I decided to get into film a little later than maybe some of my classmates because my undergrad was in art history, and all my favorite films are shot on film. So when I started falling in love with film, you know, all the references were film. And then I took a class at LMU that just like was a deep dive in like writing about Broadway. Danny Rose was the film, and Raging Bull. Those were both black and white pictures. So fast forward to going to AFI, all of the year that I was there, we shot film for like my thesis and all that stuff. So I think I've always been grounded in that texture. Like it's something that, you know, feels right to me and feels emotional. And as you know, being a projectionist, like when you're there watching a print, there's nothing like it. And so I'm always trying to make digital look like film, whether that's with the LUT or how I light it or what kind of lenses I make. I'm always trying to beat it up. So when the opportunity came, I think this year I shot one picture on 16 prior to Sinners, and then I was able to shoot this movie with Ryan on film. And it's kind of where I like to sit just as a cinematographer. The set is run completely differently when you're shooting on film. Everyone behaves differently. There's a respect and a process that everyone needs to adhere to, a patience and kind of a bravery and a strength that everyone needs to have. And you kind of have to have no fear, you know. And I like to kind of work in that type of environment.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, you know, obviously wanting to shoot on film from the beginning. But as I understand, when this project started, you and Ryan, the thinking with the project was that it was going to be shot very, very quickly, and the desire was to kind of fit it in from a scheduling standpoint very fast. And I think that might have informed the original sort of path, which was to potentially shoot on 16mm, right? And
yeah, he had this idea, you know, to like getting all the people he wanted together, his kind of film family, and you know, at that time, you know, everyone was available, and he wanted to make sure it happened at that time, schedule-wise, and he wanted to shoot on 16. So before I read the script, I knew that it was a period piece. He wanted to shoot on 16, and that we would shoot in the South. That's all I knew. And then I read it, and obviously I was blown away and was flipping out after I read it. And then it escalated into large format. I think we were gonna shoot 35 for some twinning. That we needed to have less gate weave, because 16 comes with a little bit of gate weave in the camera. For the twinning, that's not desirable. So, but we upped it to large format after kind of a conversation with the studio and Ryan kind of thinking a bit bigger.
And so that was a pretty natural journey. That the fuse was lit on that to start off with, because of the visual effects, the demands of Michael B. Jordan needing to be duplicated in a single shot and technically. But that seems to have opened up this incredible canvas for both of you to be able to tell this story at this scale. Because I mean, as somebody who's projected this film now in its original film format, we've run it, I believe, 170 times at City Walk. This, to me, feels like the ultimate big screen experience as a storytelling medium. And I'm just curious, as far as a journey for you, what were the critical points in that journey that made you feel that this was the medium to use for this story?
Yeah, I mean, with Ryan, he's always, I think, because the last picture we did, Wakanda Forever, that lasted a year. So, you know, if you're going to spend a year with anyone shooting a movie, that's a long time. And I think, you know, he said, I'm the cinematographer he's worked with the most, because that ran such a long time, that film. And so you really get to know somebody. And he's always thinking big. He always is open to big ideas, thinking outside of the box, being very brave. So when he first got the call from the studio asking us if we were going to do thinking of large format, he called me and he was like, "Look, let's explore it. and obviously we're shooting film, so when you say large format film, that means 65, and whether that's 5 perf or 15 perf, that's what that means. So he's like, let's get a test together, and he brought up the Hateful Eight format, which is the 5 perf 276, because he was thinking about how the width and that wide scope would be desirable for the script. And so we did a test, and we went out to the desert in Lancaster, and I just called some friends at Photochem, and I called, the camera house, and I got a bunch of stuff together to show him, even some 35 stuff, some anamorphic 35. And we just explored it, but I sent him an email before, and we just did ASC talk, and he was talking about this email. That's so funny. We're not always together, so I'll always put an email together where I let him know, like, some super technical, all the technical aspects of, like, whatever options we have.
Right.
And I was calling the option of 276 plus IMAX the full banana. I was like, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, but if we do this is like the full banana. And that made him excited and, made him laugh, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, it's really just like when someone is so kind of inventive and brave and, like, you can think the world is your oyster, So it was very much like I just got all the tools on the table with Panavision, and we went out and looked at all of them. And that excites me. I mean, my team and I are super nerds. I mean, you've met my team members.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
They're fantastic technical artists. And so when we were given kind of a directive to, like, open the box up, we're looking at everything. So we took it all out there. We shot tests, and then we looked at those tests in 70, your favorite, at Photochem, and then also at Playa Vista, the 15 perf IMAX. And, once you see that stuff projected, as you know, you don't really turn back. So we were very excited when we saw it, and it was beautiful. And from that moment on, we just fought and tried to, like, logistically, and obviously our producers were amazing and trying to get that format available to us.
The scale of this, particularly for you, as somebody who understands how much technical work has to go into really make this success at this level.
Yeah, I think when you work with people that you're close with and you like, and they're like your family, you feel as brave as you need to be, right? The technical stuff, that's just logistics. Like, I think if you have a grasp on that, and I'm a very technical person, I enjoy that process. That process, you do all that, you do all your homework with your team, you make sure everyone's on point, but then when you are able to set that aside, then you can play, and that's the fun part. Right. With Ryan is like, he knows that I, have a great team, and that we're gonna, like, make everything, tight for him, make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row, and then when we're on set, we can, like, think big and be like, oh, is this gonna be IMAX? Is this gonna be 276? But I think it's for everyone, it's a thing, right? Because as you know, it's like development, scanning, VFX, budget, actors. The camera is very loud. It's not sync sound. Having both camera systems available. We have a tech on our staff, and there's a lot of, like, work. But if you have the right people, it can be very amazing. Like, that whole process can be lovely. So it's really just making sure that's all tight, so you can play and make these kind of images. Yeah.
Speaking of images that end up benefiting from working at this format, can we talk about the twinning? First of all, the performances are incredible. So let's just start there. I mean, he did an amazing job understanding the nuance behaviorally with twins and being able to capture that. But that first shot of Smoke and Stack, and the decision to move around them and separate the two of them and bring that entire thing to life with the cigarette handoff and all of it, to me, is one of those moments where it's like what a great magician does, which is to do something that gets everybody in the room, right? Figure out what you can do that is going to sell it immediately to everybody who's there, so that the moment the story continues, you are not questioning that this is a reality where there's two brothers and they're twins. How did you guys pull that off, particularly on an exterior shot? I mean, it's a real sky back there,
yeah,
right?
No.
It's not a digital replacement. It's not a face replacement. It's an actual comped shot of the two of them.
Yeah, we were on a scout because Hannah, our production designer, who we worked with on Panther, who Ryan's always worked with, who's like a sister to me, she built us a 3-walled set, which is a lumber mill on an exterior location. And so we had that, at our disposal, and we went to scout it, and we angled it in the right way so that I could have it south-facing, so I'd always have that backlight. And why I did that is because I like backlight, but it allows us on all those twinning shots, like when we're shooting an A side and a B side, you got to be pretty quick. But you know, you don't want to rush any process. But obviously, the sun moves, so the last thing you want is it to move too much, and then it doesn't match. So that did help that it was, you know, backlit in our favor and always, you know, behind them. But yeah, it was. We got very lucky that day that it was sunny. On the Scout, I offered that shot up to Ryan because I think originally he had thought about it as just being a split screen with the two brothers. And then I had him and our AD on the Scout, and I said, hey, what if we come around? And I took a little video on my iPhone, and I said, what if we come around and, you know, he grows out of him? And Ryan loved it, but that meant, you know, a lot more time and complication. Our VFX supervisor suggested a techno dolly, and instead of the supervisor saying, you know what, let's just do head replacement, he was down for the cause to shoot it in camera, which is very, very difficult when doing something like that because it has to be exactly perfect.
So this is Michael Rella, who is an incredible VFX supervisor.
Who we worked with on Panther. He was our second unit VFX supervisor. And his intention is always to work with us in a way that's to get everything in camera, because that's something we like to do, and he supports that, which is lovely, because that's not always the case, is to make sure that the actual photography that you're capturing it stays true and grounded even in the post process, and that the final image is most of what you shot, and you know, any alterations are needed, but that he is using real skies if they're good. He's using all the material that we shot that needs to be used. But Michael is so precise and so brilliant that, like, you know, when you're doing these types of twins things and you have to be exact, he's doing most of the work because he's so good and meeting marks. And, you know, we had, you know, you have these beeps that go off in the sound department so that he knows when to take the cigarette out, when to light it. There's a little marker there for him to kind of, you know, he's not looking, but he puts his hand where it needs to be, and everything's so precise. We did that shot for the A side is 18 takes, and then you slave yourself to the A side, and then you shoot the B side. But yeah, it was a lot of work. But I think because Ryan and Michael, like, they've worked together, you know, for so long, and they want it to be real as far as, like, the performance is grounded, and it's always Michael, you know, and so to have that, you have to do it all in camera and put them together. So it worked out very well.
Particularly critical when you know you're going to be blowing these images up to be the size of an IMAX screen. There's really very little margin for error there on Michael's side, on your side, on any of it. What was I'm just curious, what between the A take and the B take, how long elapsed between that?
Like, we had been doing twin shots for a while, so
at least this wasn't you, even though it's the first shot in the film, you guys were
like, we had been annoyed by the process prior, and it's so tedious, you know. So this was kind of on the end of our schedule, and so we had it dialed in by then, I would say, like, more so than, like, earlier when we were still kind of, you know, the process can, you know, take time, and so this was maybe he has a 30-minute turnaround, like, he's, you know, he goes away, he changes, he has to change his look. So we're talking like 30 or so minutes, and then he comes back. And that's hard to do, you know, performance-wise. Like, he puts himself in a zone, and then he goes away for 30 minutes. He has to put himself in a completely new character and execute the same shot again. And he has a stand-in brother, so whenever he's not acting, that, you know, he has someone to work off of.
So that shot was shot with Ultra Panavision, which is 5 perf, which is actually an interesting. So I've got with me here. So this is a strip of IMAX film, so you guys could just sort of see the scale of this. This is a strip that's got 4 frames of film, obviously 24 frames a second, approximately 6 feet of film through the camera every second, and then it's 6 feet of film through the projector every second. But it's the same film format for Ultra Panavision that's turned on its side, like this. Right, so Ultra Panavision runs vertically through the camera.
Yeah, 2 different camera systems, but the same film. So when you get the film, it's all 65, and you just run it through the camera. One is horizontal, one's vertical.
And the frame size on the camera is created by the aperture of the gate itself. It's not created by the film strip. So when Autumn says 5 perf, what she's meaning is that these first 5 perforations right at the top there, that's about the size of an Ultra Panavision frame, with an anamorphic lens on it, which is what gives this beautiful 2:7:6 aspect ratio that you guys saw the film in tonight, right? But then with IMAX, it's the same stock. It runs horizontally through the camera. And so if you think about it, with IMAX, the width of Ultra Panavision is actually the height of an IMAX frame. And I can't think of a shot in the movie, to me, that is, it seems more daunting than the surreal montage, to be able to accomplish this all on IMAX film. Can you take us through the whole process on that?
Yeah, if you guys get a chance to see it in IMAX, it's really worth it because there's so much going on. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautifully written on the page. And I think recently Ryan was saying he like put it in italics, and he made a joke about it being like he put it in italics because he was like kind of letting us as a team know like we need to figure this out.
Like,
but
caution,
yeah.
this whole situation needs careful consideration.
But to be honest, when I read it, it's beautiful, and it turned out just as beautiful. Meaning, like his explanation of it, his passion for it, and what he wanted out of the scene, I think ultimately happened, which is always nice, right? Because that's not always the case for sure. But he did some early storyboards of what kind of he envisioned, and then it's one of those shots, and we have many in the script, that takes a lot of meetings and a lot of department heads just kind of collaborating to execute. And we always knew it wanted to be one fluid shot, or I think because he wrote it as one big fat paragraph, and so that kind of was like, oh, well, and he loves oneers, so he kind of, said, well, we could do it as one, and because the mag is too heavy, it's a 1,000-foot load in an IMAX camera, but it's too heavy for the operator, so we have to down spool it to half a mag, which is 75 seconds. So because the shot lasts more than 75 seconds, we have 3 different shots in the interior of the mill that are stitched together. Then it goes to a VFX takeover to a burning roof plate. We really, on the last day of photography, we burn the roof in the stage.
To get a real reference.
To get a real reference. And then it tips back down into a night exterior that we shot later. Different day, different night exterior of shooting. So that's like 2 days of work. And then the night exterior is off of a crane, like a 50-foot movie bird that pulls back on 100 feet of track. And then that's the shot. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's one of those shots where the director's asking you to kind of take a ride, and learn something, but also feel something, because it's very felt, that kind of shot.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, logistically, you don't want to get in the way of the shot, right? You want to make sure that it's not like you don't see the hand of the operator or see the hand of the filmmakers. It should just all be felt.
I did want to hear more of your thoughts on the responsibility set of being director of photography on this, but also a camera operator at the same time. Being a DP, as you've said, it's sort of equal parts a management job and a creative job, but then you add operating to that as well, and it just feels, particularly with large format film, cameras, all the rest of it, wow.
I was very tired at the end of the day because I had to use my brain a lot.
4 or 5 jobs, yeah.
And I love operating, especially with film. He likes to run more than one camera, so we ran 2 cameras. I had my same B camera operator, Josh, who Josh Medak, who worked with us on Panther as well. So I always bring on the same family, and Ryan knows all these people, so it's really nice. It feels very much like a continuation of the filmmakers that we made the first film with. And so I operated a camera. But yeah, I mean, it's really a logistical challenge in the sense of like you have to have 2 huge camera systems ready to go at any notice, for changes that need to be made. So the pressure is on the camera team. My B camera focus puller, who also was on Wakanda Forever, is very good. And so, that whole team just needs to be ready whenever we call for 15 or 5 perf. And I had a ground glass made because ultimately most of the theaters are seeing it like you guys saw it in only 276. And only like 40 theaters, I think.
40 theaters are capable of doing it at
IMAX.
full height, 143.
Because no one's ever done this before, which it was so cool to think that outside of the box, like having these drastic ratios. And as a team, we shot a test and we did a little edit and we looked at it in Playa Vista on the big screen, IMAX headquarters, and it felt right to us. It felt good. It felt like a good storytelling tool, and to be able to put them together was really lovely. And it's really just the editing too, like Ryan working with Michael Shaver, making sure that that's elegant, that things are transitioning and you're not feeling these big jumps, but the storytelling is still, consistent and cohesive. So they did a fantastic job, I think, of like making sure that felt right, because it's a very drastic change. If you see this movie in IMAX, after you watch it. As you know, he's watched it 170 times.
Yeah. Come
so-
join the
Yeah.
club. It's great. I would suggest watching it even 10 times and it still holds
Yeah,
up.
it's weird.
you know?
I think
It
there's
really
someone
does.
in the audience that's
You know,
a friend
actually,
of ours.
there
He's
is
right
somebody
there.
Here. He's
Yeah,
right
there
here
you
who
go.
has watched it many, many times.
Many, many
you know?
times. I sat next to him.
It's like, I'll go get something to drink and
Yeah.
Shane could just
It does it like it feels right. And so we made a ground glass, and you never want, as an operator, to, like, you want to be able to just operate the scene and compose as you would. But I did have ticks in there that showed the 143, the 276, the 19, because, you know, a 70 IMAX projections 143, which is the full gate that we shot. And then there are IMAX theaters that are digital IMAX theaters that are a 190 aspect ratio, which is a little shorter. So I had all these ratios, but I tend to center punch everything. So when you center punch everything, you have a very much a center line on the frame, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of, you know, have your character in the center. So when you're going into post and you're doing all your formats and you're doing all your QCs, there's some adjusting that you can do because the IMAX frame is so big, right? So on your 276 final, I have a little leeway to adjust that image to make sure that it fits in this box here.
Right, so you can take your center punched 143 and
Exactly.
then
If I want more
move
headroom,
it, to make it work for a 276.
Yeah, and it's like a pan and scan essentially because the shot's moving, right? So you got to make sure that if you're adjusting it, that when it moves to the end of the shot, that you haven't chopped someone's head off or something like that.
It is the most extreme aspect ratio jump that actually could be conceived in any modern format. 276 to 143 is about as extreme as it gets. Maybe you could go to 137, you know, for Academy Flat, but it's the most extreme. And from my perspective, and I've been projecting IMAX for 20 years, it is the most effective use of aspect ratio changes in any film that I've ever projected or seen or any of it. It's so thoughtfully done. The sequences that you guys chose to shoot on 143 versus 276 are totally motivated by the narrative. Can you talk a little bit about how those decisions were made and even the decision about the church scene, which I know is your favorite scene?
Yeah. I think when you're doing an IMAX picture, there's kind of, you know, you want to make sure that your IMAX movie ticket goer has, you know, stuff to watch, right? So there's kind of a number that you try to hit in order to kind of feel good about selling that IMAX ticket. So say that's 20 minutes or so, like there's a good amount of IMAX footage in the movie.
Right.
So we're very aware of that when we decide to go large format, and we know that it's going to be, you know, put out in IMAX theaters. But then the next exercise is also that you have in mind is that it's not a sync sound camera. It sounds like a lawnmower. It's very loud. So, you know, it's, you know, say 2 feet from your actors, it's very loud. So you wouldn't really tag heavy dialogue scenes for shooting IMAX. However, as we started shooting, Ryan, you know, really thought that things would benefit from making them IMAX. So, for instance, the opener of the movie, that's one of my favorite scenes. It was set to be in 276 because it had, you know, a lot of dialogue in it. But I think 3 days before, Ryan decided to shoot in IMAX, talked to his actors, and they ultimately did ADR. That was the decision that was made. So they, you know, they would act on set and you would record sound, but then later they would dub that sound over the image, you know, because the camera was so loud. So, you know, it's a beautiful thing to now have that scene in IMAX, because originally, like, you know, thinking outside the box, you know, that's kind of what Ryan does best. So we did that for a few scenes. The farmhouse scene where you see Jack jump into the frame, that was also a heavy dialogue scene that we decided to shoot IMAX after we started shooting. So yeah, I mean, we did the exercise and prep where you go through the whole script and you earmark things for IMAX and you say what's going to be what. So we have that all planned out. Then you work with your camera team to make sure that in the schedule with the AD that all that stuff is, like, you know, scheduled, and that everybody in your camera team knows what format to have ready, you know, and all the mags need to be loaded and all this stuff. So all this logistical stuff needs to happen. But then when we change it, then they have to pivot quickly and you know, make sure that everything's ready for us. So yeah, it was a beautiful exercise to do, but then it was also amazing that he decided to change it. Because, I mean, you've heard me talk about this. My 2 favorite scenes are the church opener and then Remick, the farmhouse scene with the Choctaw. Right. And those both were not supposed to be IMAX.
The thing that's so special about this movie to me is that it has become the cultural phenomenon that it has become, and a lot of that took place in theaters at a time when theaters are, it's getting harder and harder to draw people out of their homes to come to the theaters. Do you?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, thank you, by the way, for coming out. I shot these photos that I shared with you, and then I shared with the internet, and a lot of people saw them. I shared them because I felt like it was an amazing thing to see this number of people in a space totally transfixed by the story that they were telling. And it's so rare that we have that sense of, what we call a communal experience, but almost in some ways a spiritual experience, because you're completely focused on the story. You're not distracted by all the pings and bells and whistles of modern life. And I think for you as a cinematographer, that just must be so gratifying to be able to have that canvas to communicate with. Do you feel, from your point of view as a cinematographer, that the theatrical experience, can you just talk about what that means to you and being able to communicate with an audience on that canvas in that way, at that scale?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but we make these films in a community. Like, I'm on set with hundreds of people. We're all there. Everyone's left their family to like give their time and energy to really pour their heart into the story and help the director, kind of realize their vision. And it feels great. Like, you can't make a movie by yourself. It's really all about the team that makes it. And so when you get to share it and you sit in the theater and you're also surrounded by people and it feels like a community, right? You make it in a community, you share it in community, and then you're sitting in the theater and you just let yourself go. You forget what's at home. You've hired a babysitter. Ryan always talks about this, and he takes it very seriously. Like, he always talks about it. Like, we'd be on set and he would say, like, big movie, this has a release date. It's like people will see this movie.
Yeah.
And he wants it to be a great experience, and he wants them to feel happy about the fact they bought a ticket for that amount of money, that they drove somewhere and they sat there with, a community. And you feel the energy in the room. I think it's different, as like when you're at home and you're sitting and watching Netflix and you pause it, or there's like a bunch of weird light shining in the room, or maybe
Get
the
a
TV.
call or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's
right.
your TV setting sucks, and
Right,
who knows
right.
what's happening there.
Right. They forgot to turn on filmmaker mode,
Yeah,
and everything is now
Someone watched the
extrapolated.
soccer game
Yeah,
earlier
right. Somebody
that
watched
night.
it exactly,
It's
and they're like, "Why is all this motion smoothing
Yes.
on?" Yeah.
So you can't control that, but what I can control is the 70 millimeter print.
You certainly can.
Is so
It's
beautifully
exactly right.
projected by Taylor here. And I've been, I went like 3 or 4 times, and then afterwards, you sit in the lobby and you meet people and you talk to people about the film. It feels very nice, and it's exactly what I think Ryan came from. And like, I remember the first time I saw The Dark Knight, like, I was blown away. Like, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you talk to your friends about it, and that whole vibe, it's like, everyone misses that and they love that. And so he really was like, that's always in his mind when he's making films. And so
It's so great. It's so great there's an awareness of that
great.
on set.
Oh, yeah.
Because the feeling, I think, sometimes on set is that it's all about, like, well, we just have to make this in a way that we feel good about it. But there's another reality, which is that it is about that connection with a larger audience.
We're always thinking about the audience, for sure. Like, I think we put a lot of ourself into the film, and a lot of our heads of department, like, have a connection to the South. We're all people of color and, have family that were either, like, my father was born in New Orleans and my great-grandmother was born in Mississippi. Like, we have a connection. So we're making the film for us and our ancestors, but we're also thinking about everyone who's going to see it and how the audiences have not seen these types of people on the big screen before. This type of, this culture on 15 perf IMAX, these skin tones on 15 perf IMAX. So, it's nice.
It's never been done. It's never been done till you did it.
So it was, I think, originally, like, he's very thoughtful filmmaker like that. So in turn, working with him, I've become more thoughtful as well about, like, the final outcome.
We would love to open this up a little bit and hear from any of you guys if you've got questions for Autumn or want to hear more about this process.
The scene, the Irish jig outside. Could you tell us a little bit about how you shot that?
Yeah, actually, I don't think, because everyone asked about the other one. I think some people have brought that up, but that location that I was mentioning, Hannah built the 3-wall set on this old abandoned golf course, and it was next to a river, because in the script we needed the river so that we could, he could jump outside of the lumber mill into the river. And so on the other half of that set, so if I'm looking away from the lumber mill set, there was a big plot of land, just like a dirt plot. And so she built that kind of, when the fire dance happens in the other musical sequence, that's the same area that Jack does his Irish jig. So we lit that night exterior out there, and we had all of the, cast out there. And I lit it with I had like a, big softbox on construction crane, and then some balloons and a bunch of lighting across the river, kind of shining and glowing the trees up. And we just, they played the music, and we shot it all Steadicam. So it's my Steadicam operator running around, doing a bunch of passes of that scene with all the people dancing. So essentially it became kind of like, just a party, and, you're capturing it. And Jack's doing all of that, and the music is playing, and it was pretty cool. And then the sun rose, and I had to kind of time down the sky because Ryan kept shooting, and then the sun was coming up, and the sky was starting to get blue, and obviously once it gets too much, it doesn't match. So we shot that all night long until the sun rose. But it was really cool because I think first of all, just difficult shot to shoot focus wise because it's very dark. And wide open.
And you're wide open on that.
Yeah, and Ethan did a fantastic job. And the dailies were really cool. So, and then it was obviously we have choreographer, and there was, they rehearsed it and stuff prior to shooting it. But it was really fun, a lot of energy.
I was curious if you could, Stan, I don't know if you can see. I was curious if you could speak to your experience when you go into post and you're working with your DI timer or your like final colorist. What are the qualities in like a aspiring colorist or a colorist that make you like excited to go into the suite or excited to keep coming back?
Since this was the first time I did 65, and I've worked with Photochem a lot, like in the past, like that movie I did right before this, I shot on film, and I was able to work with Kostas Theodosou. His Greek last name, so I always try to
Who is so
that.
Great.
Loveliest human being you'll ever meet.
Yeah, all the Chris Nolan movies.
All the Chris Nolan films. Yeah. So we worked on that small film that I did, Last Showgirl, prior to Sinners. Loved working with him, same dailies timer, and they work very well together. So they're both at Photochem. Kostas made us a dailies LUT. We used that LUT for the dailies, and then we tweaked the final LUT. And our whole goal, and because he has such a great eye for film, is to watch the prints together and match the prints. So even though I'm doing a DI, even though I'm scanning it, and then I'm doing a DI because I have all this visual effects, the whole goal is to make sure that all formats, whether it's Dolby or the DCP or the 70 print or the 5-perf print, that they all feel cohesive and they all feel like the print, like the actual print, from the negative. So that's what he does so well, and he's been doing for years, and I learned a lot from him in the whole process. And he's just very thoughtful, and he works from here, right? So he's someone that protects the kind of visual, like your visual kind of intent, but also just the heart and soul of the image. What I mean by that is I have a very kind of specific way in which I like to expose in the black level and where I like the highlights to sit. And so he's protecting that throughout, even though it's being scanned and even though we're doing a DI, he's making sure that, and I was able to be in the room with him the whole time, because that's what's great with Ryan is that I'm there for all of post, even the visual effects reviews he involves me in. And this man was just lovely, and he protected that. He made sure that, when I would say to him, I was like, make sure this, that, and the other, and he'd make sure that through line was throughout in every format, and we'd look at them together and we'd tweak them. And that's just someone that's very thoughtful, but also he's very seasoned. He's a legend, to be honest. So but he works in a way that's you don't feel that. I'm working with him. He's giving me as much respect as he would give Wally Pfister or Hoyte. And even though it's my first time, working with this format, he's respecting my vision as a DP. So I had a great time working with him. It was and then the second time, so. So yeah, I think that's kind of important to me. I work a lot with Tom Poole. I worked with Tom Poole on Wakanda Forever. I'm sure if you're a colorist, you know who Tom Poole is. And completely different process on Wakanda, but also the same thing. Tom is a great eye, and we're friends outside of work. So I would hang out with both of these people, even outside of work. And so I enjoy spending time with them because how it is. You got to be in a room for hours on end. I don't want to be in a room with someone I don't like. So.
I'm curious about like when you're shooting, if you're having an emotional response, or if so much of that from your position comes when you're receiving it at the end, like when you're re-reviewing it.
I would say that's the type of filmmaker I am, and I think Ryan appreciates that about me. That I'm very much an emotional shooter. I'm an emotional filmmaker. Like I'm there for the emotion. I'm putting the camera where I feel it needs to be to kind of get the biggest kind of feeling or emotion for the audience, for myself, because I just believe that if it's working on me, it's going to work on you as well. And so we do a lot of prep, and we board everything, we do previs. But when I'm in the space and I'm watching rehearsal with Michael or Woomy, and even though you prep it, I'm very much present in what I'm seeing. And especially with the designer, like I work a lot with my designer, we're very close, and so she's always creating like very real textured spaces for me, and lighting is so important to me. So once I'm in the space and it's fully built out and I've lit it, that's where I feel like can have an intention from what I did with Ryan in the boards or how we scheduled it, but I'm very much paying attention to what's going on in front of me. It's important to kind of always have your eye to the eyepiece. Ryan sits right next to me. He's always next to the camera. We'd have a discussion. So the moment I see something, I go and tell him, I'm like, maybe it shouldn't be here. Maybe it should be over here. Or, if I've lit it in a certain way that changes kind of where the camera should be, or, all of those things I'm paying attention to in the moment. And then, what you're seeing on the screen is I remember every shot, that I do, how it affected me. So I think the reason why those two scenes that I brought up, the church scene and the Remick scene, because I was so affected when I was shooting those. I felt like I was watching a movie. I did not feel like I was on set when I was shooting that. It was that powerful.
Was there rules that you guys had kind of set? How did you guys decide, other than the quota of doing a certain amount of IMAX, was there a rule creatively or technically to choose 5 or 15?
Yeah, I mean, at first it was just, like I was saying, the dialogue, in the script, we went through the script, and anything that was more musically driven, we slotted for IMAX. So the Jack dancing, the oneer, the musical oneer. There's some stuff in the car that's more, kind of landscapey stuff. We had tagged that. And then I think we always knew the end we would do, the fight between Remick and Sammy after he jumps out of the thing. And then also the fight sequence, all that vampire fight sequence in the interior, we decided to do IMAX. And then later on, it was an emotional decision that Ryan made to turn a couple of those into that were 5-perf into IMAX. So it was great because it just means that more of the movie has IMAX in it. And then there was that one shot where they're all lined up before the vampires kind of rush in, and oh, sorry, you guys aren't. Well, if you go see it in IMAX, like Taylor's saying, the gate grows, and so it grows from a 2.76 shot to an IMAX shot.
In the frame, not
yeah.
just a cut, but it actually rolls up.
It rolls up,
masking in a
which is really cool. So that's a VFX effect. We shot it 5-perf, we shot it in IMAX, and then VFX seams it together and makes it sync up. But yeah, I mean, it's really I think great that after the fact he decided to turn those into IMAX, and it's a conversation we had 3 days before or something like that on some of these scenes, and then you get everything ready. But yeah, I mean, it's just a bunch of math that you do in prep, because you haven't started shooting it, you haven't gotten emotionally attached to the format yet, so you're just kind of going through the script doing math, okay, this doesn't have any dialogue, let's slot that for it. Or, this could be great, so it's kind of guessing game. And then when you get out there, you get obsessed with the format and you fall in love with it. So you're just looking for stuff. I'm like, Ryan, that looks great. Let's get the IMAX camera. It's like he'll find a place for it. It looks amazing.
The moon is a good example of
yeah,
that.
or just the
or
two
just
guys,
the sky,
the sunset. Or there's some landscapey stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that. You start to fall in love, and then, it's just you're trying to shoot everything with it. So.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. I know it's late. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Autumn, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the incredible film. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Take care, guys.